I name, well, let me make sure you understand it. I name the Commissioner of Education. I name the Commissioner of Insurance. I name the Health and Human Services Director. So we have a near operating cabinet. Plus, I name boards and commissions that oversee the different agencies. So take for example, Health and Human Services. There's a board of citizens who I name over a period of time. And they nominate, for example, who the executive director is going to be, and I have veto power. So I have direct involvement. But it's not like a cabinet form of government as other states know it. But I've named a lot of people to boards and commissions. There's a lot of people who would say, well, I owe my job to Governor Bush. And sometimes they listen to that, and sometimes they don't remember that. But nevertheless, I feel like I've got quite a bit of power. Is that a derisive term? I think they meant it to be. It didn't bother me. I mean, anytime an opponent starts making fun of you on the campaign trail, it's generally a good sign. Did you ever do that to an opponent? No. What's your philosophy of how you treat an opponent? I ignore my opponents. I try to. Totally? Don't mention them by name? Well, occasionally I point out issue differentials, but I try not to make the campaigns personal. I think Americans are sick of negative campaigning. And so in my race against Governor Richards, I treated her with the utmost of respect. I thought she had made some bad decisions, and I reminded people of those bad decisions, but I did so in a way that was not derogatory. It was respectful, and I think Texans appreciated that. In this last campaign, it was the same way. My opponent and I talked election night, and he said, look, I appreciated the way you ran the campaign. I said, no problem. Yeah, I do, particularly if it's a well-written speech. Yes, I like it. What's your philosophy of a speech? How long should it be? And I think shorter is better than longer. I believe in having a well-organized address. I think it is very important to know what you want to say and say it. And I think it has to be a very plain-spoken. I like plain words to the point. And so, for example, the inauguration address, there was 3 points I wanted to make. Texas had to be an open, educated, and united society if we're going to have a 21st century that's worth anything. And it was well structured, I thought, and let me get to the point. Had a few kind of poetic lines, and I got off the mic at the right time before people went to sleep. Do you prefer it being written? Generally the way I think any speech maker would tell you that the first time they've delivered a speech, there has to be a text. I don't know many speech makers who have taken a brand new speech with new lines and new concepts and who can memorize it completely to be able to deliver it as if it just came off the top of their head. But I think once you get used to certain lines, speech making can be quite spontaneous. I mean, it's very easy during the course of a campaign. After you've given the same speech 1,000 times, of course, all I used to do is just take an envelope, similar to yours there, and put a few points. Remember to talk about schools, juvenile justice, so-and-so, such and such. And the words came quite naturally, and it would be amazing how close the words were that I was giving at the end of the campaign to the actual sentences when I kicked off my campaign that I had to stay on script for. I don't know, that's a long-winded answer to say, initially, I think on a big speech, a new speech, you've got to stay on script. Do you use humor? A lot. Does it work? Well, if it doesn't work, the joke's on me. But you tell jokes or you just tell stories? I tell them I'm pretty good on one-liners, and I love to tell stories. If you've got any good material, I'd like to use it. But as a matter of fact, we're beginning to prepare the State of the State, and I would like to have a lot of humor in the beginning. There's going to be a lot of tension in the air about the national speculation, and I want to poke fun at myself. I love to tell the story, for example, of people love to hear about mother, and they love to hear about dad, and they love to hear about animals and pets and family. And I love to tell the story about dad going through an identity crisis, and it first came to be when mother was getting her hair done, and the hairdresser gushed. He said, "I just cannot believe I'm doing the hair of the mother of the governor of Texas." And mother said, "Well, what about the hair of the ex-president?" She said, "Oh yeah, that too." And then people laugh and laugh. They love to hear about mom. But I think humor is important. I think humor is really important because it indicates that you don't take yourself so seriously. And oftentimes in politics, people take themselves very seriously. When do people know you're mad? When I tell them. I'm kind of like my mother in those in that regard. I can express myself quite clearly, but I also get over it. I don't bear grudges.
In politics, what have you learned? I'm going to ask you about a bunch of people. Your brother Jeb, about politics from your brother.
It's important not to give up. Brother Jeb got whipped in 1994. It must have been a really tough moment for him to come to my inauguration shortly thereafter and see one brother get sworn in, another brother head back into the private life.
But you got whipped in '77.
I did, but he wasn't old enough to be going to any inaugurations then. But I did, and frankly, it was a blessing. I had just gotten married.
You ran for Congress.
I ran for Congress. Ken Hance, who is now a Republican, ran a great race, and I came in second in a two-man field. And it was a wonderful experience to be out there in West Texas, which is my home and where I was raised. And it was not such a wonderful experience to lose on election night, but it was a great experience for me and Laura.
What did you do?
In the campaign, run a race I can't win.
And what did that mean?
Well, that meant that this was a district at the time that was impossible for me to win in. And I was told this by some of the leading authorities. I think if you were to check with Bob Strauss, he would confirm. As a matter of fact, he needled me the other day about reminding me that I had gone to see him. He said, it's going to be a tough race for you. Basically, you can't win. Governor Alan Shivers sat me down and said, I understand you're thinking about running against Hance in the 19th Congressional. I said, yes, I am, Governor. He said, you can't win the race, son. And I didn't listen. I didn't care, I guess. I just went after it. I campaigned as hard as I could, ran a credible race, and lost.
What have you learned about politics from your mother?
That people are dying for honesty and humor and a straight shooter.
From your father?
That you can go into the system with your integrity intact and leave with your integrity intact.
And from your wife?
Don't try to be such a big shot. Keep your feet on the ground. You know, you're not as cool as you think you are.
Where'd you meet Laura?
I met her in the backyard of Joe and Jan O'Neill in Midland, Texas. Joey was cooking burgers, and they said, we'd like for you to meet a great friend of ours. We grew up with her. And Laura was a public school librarian here in Austin and went over there to visit her mother and dad for the weekend. And she showed up at the backyard, and it was love at first sight. And we've been married ever since.
What
didn't get a good deal for me. I'm not so sure it's been a good deal for her.
What does she do in the political world that has an impact?
She listens to people. She is not one of these wives that, you know, is kind of charging out ahead of the candidate. She's quiet. She brings a lot of grace to the office. And she's done some really, really effective things. For example, we've had a Texas Book Festival that raises money for rural libraries. And for the third year, I want to say third year, well, anyway, second or third year, authors from all across Texas have come here to the Capitol to be heralded, and there's seminars, and you know, Larry McMurtry reads, and people from all over the state are beginning to catch on. There's a wonderful place to come and buy books and get them signed for Christmas, but as well as to listen to Texas literature. Anyway, Laura's brought a lot of stature to Texas writers, many of whom had been ignored all their life, and as I say, it raises money for rural libraries as well.
What is she?
She loves campaigning in Texas. She's not thrilled with the idea of going national.
Why?
Would you be? I mean, it's the meat grinder. It's a different life. It's a huge sacrifice. As I say, she's normal too.
How much?
Well, every night. She's got a free shot at the old governor. I mean, it's.
But is it consistent that she says no, no, no?
Well, I don't think she says no, no, no. Actually, she says be careful, be careful, be careful.
You him?
Yes, I like him.
So when we read him, is that you tipping him off as the?
No, I'm not. I really no. He's on his own. I don't spend a lot of time on the phone back channeling to writers or columnists and political writers.
How are you related to him?
He's my dad and his mom are brother and sister.
The reason I just wanted to ask you about a couple of things he said.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I think it's pretty ugly, Brian. I think most people feel that way. I certainly do.
Why do you think it got there?
No leadership.
All sides, all politics, all parties?
Well, I just think I think that's a nice loaded question, isn't it? It's I think that anytime you have the president created such an embarrassing situation, it lowers the standard. And that's why most Americans, including this governor, want to get it behind us and get it over with. I think it's hard for legislators to set a national agenda. I mean, the Speaker of the House has got to worry about committee assignments and amendments and, you know, rules and process, and same with the majority leader of the Senate. It's impossible to expect members of the Congress to be able to behave like a CEO or head of the executive branch. They just are not in a position to do so. So I don't fault the Congress.
I hear